Good morning, everyone. I realize it's the first session Monday, so it might be a little bit difficult to get interested. What we're going to do is we're going to fly. We're going to go really fast, so hopefully that'll be more interesting. We're going to do something a little bit different than sometimes you might see. We're not going to do the sort of standard investors conference kind of presentation, but instead I'm going to tell a little story. I'm going to talk a little bit about Cambium Learning. I'm going to take just a few minutes on the problem you're all familiar with, and that is U.S. school system has some challenges. It's in fact broken in some cases. So I'm going to talk really briefly about the market. Now I'm going to talk about what we have done in that market as we try to learn. And I think that's one of the things you have to do in this business is to learn, listen to your customers, listen to your teachers, invest. And then finally, I'm going to end with the conclusion. The conclusion I'm going to give you now, so if you fall asleep during it, you'll already have that takeaway, so you've gained something from your time here. The takeaway is, we've had a lot of these meetings, ASU, GSV, and other places, where they've said, can you invest in K-12 and get a return? A lot of people have said, oh, I don't know, maybe you have to invest in higher ed. I'm going to tell you that's not the case. The reality is you can do well by doing good. So I've given you the takeaway ahead of time. Now you can fall asleep or listen to the rest of the presentation. First, a little bit about Cambium Learning. We have 3 business units, and we're all focused on the same thing, helping all kids reach their potential in grades pre-K through 12. The first one, Learning A to Z, focuses on differentiated online instruction for grades pre-K through 6 in reading, writing, and science. The second one, Explore Learning, again, entirely online business, has 2 products, Gizmos, which does math and science simulations for grades 3 to 12, and MathFact Fluency, that's addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. The third business unit, Voyager Learning, focuses on those students who are 2 years or more behind in reading and math. The first 2 that I mentioned, Learning A to Z and Explore Learning, are entirely online businesses. The third is in a transition. And all 3 of these business units together focus and are bound by that mission that I talked about, which is helping all students reach their potential. I'm going to spend a little moment on the problem. I think most of you are familiar with the problem, so I won't spend a lot of time here. I could give a lot of statistics. We could talk about how 2/3 of the kids are behind reading level at grade. We could talk about how kids struggle in math. We could talk about how kids are running away from STEM education. We could talk about the dropout rates. While they've improved, we still have many urban districts with over 50% dropout rate. We could talk about all those problems, but I'm just going to point out one, and that's PISA. PISA is the program for international student assessment. They test kids 15 years old around the world. I have to tell you, and you're probably aware of this, we're 23rd in the world in reading. You know, so we're behind Canada, we're behind Ireland, we're behind Poland, okay? In math, we're 25th in the world. I mean, in science, we're 25th in the world. In math, we're 39th in the world. 39th in the world in math. So when you go to schools in your neighborhood, maybe you have kids, maybe you have other kids that you care about, and you go to their student rallies, do you sit around and say, yeah, we're 39. We're 39. Is that what you get pretty proud of? That you're 39th in the world in math? Don't worry, we're good at 2 things. We're good at women's gymnastics, number 1, and men's basketball. So as a country, we've decided what we're going to be good at, right? We're going to be good at women's gymnastics and men's basketball. This is screaming out for solutions that make a difference for kids. We have to find a way to help all students reach their potential. And that gives you just a sense of how our school systems are broken. I'm going to talk really briefly about the K-12 market. You're probably already familiar with it, but I'll give you some highlights. About $11.8 billion is spent in the K-12 market on instructional materials and services. I'm not talking about teachers. I'm talking about to publishers, to providers like us. $11.8 billion is spent. At the same time, school districts are dealing with Common Core. You're all probably familiar with Common Core. There's a big Common Core push, and there's a big Common Core backlash. They struggle to know whether to believe in Common Core or don't believe in Common Core, but whatever you decide, the reality is Common Core has raised all the standards. It's raised the standards of every state. In fact, if you look closely, the standards are still similar. But they've raised the standards. And what happens when you raise the standards is kids fail. More and more kids fail. Which that's okay, because, you know, if the urban kids fail, that's all right. But uh-oh, now the suburban kids are failing. Now the rural kids are failing. Oh, well, now I care. My kid's failing. Wait a minute, now I care. And the reality is we have more and more kids failing, so districts are calling out for what's effective so that my kids don't fail. So they look at the research. They go to places like What Doesn't Work Clearinghouse. For those of you familiar with the industry, it's called What Works Clearinghouse, but nothing actually works there. And they find that only really one thing works. The one thing that works is one-to-one tutoring. And that makes sense because I can sit down with you and I can understand your strengths, your weaknesses, how you're motivated, what's going to have you be more successful, what's going to engage you to be a successful student. So one-to-one tutoring works, but we can't afford 50 million tutors, can we? It doesn't scale. And that is the promise of instructional technology, that we can leverage that teacher across a class of 20 or 30 diverse students and be an extension of her strengths so that we can help each child learn in a personalized, adaptive way to reach their potential. That is the promise of instructional technology. That's why districts are looking at instructional technology. That is the promise of Cambium Learning. So, I like to say that we're really good at instructional technology. And you say, John, you're biased. We could care less. I don't care what you think. Well, last year we won 35 awards. I would argue it's clearly a leader in instructional technology. And is it important that we win awards? Though we do? No, it's not that important. Is it important that we're innovative? Though we are? No, it's not that important. What's important? What's important is other people saying Cambium Learning is a leader in making a difference for kids, leveraging technology to help them be successful. Again, that is what Cambium Learning is all about. So I'm going to go through these business units really quick. Learning A to Z, sort of our stalwart, our jewel, our premium example. Online differentiated instruction in reading, writing, and science. And what we've learned over the last 14 years is that we know very little and that we have to learn ourselves. So we come out with these great solutions, and we have all these great ideas, and we're going to change the world. And we go into the classroom, and they say, I like to use project-based learning. What do you do for that? Well, we weren't designed for we want to do project-based learning. We like collaboration. We like the things project-based learning does. So we had to change and figure out how can we supply our great resources in a way that they wanted to use them to solve problems that are actually in the class on the ground. When you care about efficacy, there's a lot of data. And the data comes at these teachers. And there's actually too much data in most of the products now, and the teachers don't know what to do with it. So they're saying, we need the data, John, in a way that actually helps us know what to do and when to intervene and when to be involved. These technologies don't operate outside the classroom, they operate within the classroom. So we did intuitive dashboards. And then they said, John, you're focusing on mobile for the kid. That's great. I understand why you focus on mobile for the kid. But what about me as a teacher? It would help for me to have mobile support. I want to change the classroom. I want to organize it differently. I want to have different groups. I want to change how I organize my classroom. Can you help us with that? Yes, we'll help you with that. Well, John, I want to actually assign different kids different things. In the beginning, I knew everything, by the way, so I decided what teachers should assign the whole group because I know pretty much everything. And they said, well, I want to assign that group one thing and that child one thing and that child one thing and that child one thing, so we got to support them doing that. I want to do assessments on the fly. We got to do assessments on the fly right at the moment. Right at the moment that they're learning, I want to be able to do the assessments on the fly. So then they said, well, John, I need more research. I need something that shows in What Works Clearinghouse that it works and that you're adaptive with kids. So in 2013, we bought Headsprout to help us strengthen that product and all of our products and the adaptability so that we can show the kind of research support of efficacy that you see in What Works Clearinghouse with Headsprout. So we buy Headsprout because I'm thinking, I got this figured out, I'll buy Headsprout. Problem is we buy Headsprout and it has no mobile app. So then we had to do a mobile app. So you see, over the years, we're learning. It's not all coming from us. It's often coming from the teacher. It's also coming from the classroom. It's real-world problems, not the problems maybe that we first started out to solve. This idea of gamification, one of the challenges is we don't put the learning in the hands of the student. To get them really engaged, you've seen them on PlayStation, you've seen them on Xbox, they have to be wound up. They have to be in charge of their learning, not just you. They have to be a partner with it. And yet we weren't giving them dashboards. We were giving dashboards to the teacher because the teacher needs to know. But doesn't the student need to know? And then we thought, not only do they need to read, but they started calling out and saying, we need to learn to write. How do we know that they've learned and understand everything if they can't write? So you got to give them supports to write. And how about science? A lot of times a teacher is in front of a group of science and they got 30 kids and they're all at different reading levels. So can you give us something that helps those kids at different reading levels? So we gave a science product where they could keep up with the content at 3 different reading levels so all those kids could still be involved. These are just quick examples of investing year after year after year after year. And what happens is you get bookings that grow year after year after year after year. This isn't by accident. This is because you invested every day. It's because you listened to your customers. It's because you grew every day in a better solution that helps kids reach their potential by investing in solving problems that are real, that are in the classroom. Similarly, if you look at Explore Learning, 2 products, Gizmos, Math and Science Simulations, and Reflex, which is Math Fact Fluency, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Let me tell you a little bit about math and science simulations. What we want to do is have you come into a classroom not knowing a topic and leave that classroom in 20 minutes knowing that topic. 20 minutes. We want you to get that aha moment where you suddenly know something that you didn't know before. And the way to do that that's really powerful is inquiry-based learning, because when you do it by inquiry-based learning, you're learning it for yourself, you internalize it, then you remember and can apply it. Instead of something you just forget next week, you remember it for the rest of your life. And you're saying, John, I don't know if I'm buying into all this, but we've seen teachers, because the reality is in a lot of elementary schools, math and science, teachers don't know the content because they're not math and science majors. So we have to get them to have the aha moment so that the whole class can have the aha moment. You're saying, John, I don't know if I buy all this. What do you mean, a aha moment in something difficult in math and science in 20 minutes? I'm saying, yeah. I need my hands for this. I'll give you a quick example. Mice, all right? I got a black mouse, I got a white mouse. I'm going to reproduce them. Class, what color mouse am I going to get? I can tell you I've done this gizmo hundreds of times. You know what the class says? Gray. Then another kid says striped. Boy in the back says polka dot. All right? You've already got them. You've already got them engaged. Because the hardest part of teaching is to have them listening. So they're already engaged. So you got them engaged, and now I actually do that simulation. And we reproduce that black colored mouse with that white colored mouse. You know what you get? Black, 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 black. You can do it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Still going to be black. So then a little girl in the front says, well, how do I ever get a white one? That's a good question. I don't know. Let's take these 2 children mice that are black. Class, what am I going to get? Class unanimously says black. Reproduce them. Black, black, white, black. Black, white, white, black. Black, 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 white. What's going on here? Dominant and recessive genes. You've laid the foundation for dominant and recessive genes in less than 20 minutes in a way that the teacher understands it, the children understand it, and you can grow because you have a foundation that you can build upon. How about growing plants? You want to teach about growing plants by coming into a classroom going like this? That water didn't make much difference. Still hasn't made much difference. Can't do it, can you? Can't do it in a day. Might not be able to do it in a week. But with a simulation, you can test multiple variables over days, weeks, months. Let me give you another example. Food chain. We know that if part of the food chain is destroyed, you're going to have lots of problems. You're going to test that for real? Go out and kill some wolves? I mean, in reality, there's a lot of things that you need to learn that cannot be learned with your hands. You need simulations to be able to understand it in a way that you can have an inquiry base, you internalize it, and remember forever. Coral reef. Those kids in Iowa going to visit the coral reef anytime soon? Probably not. How about chemical results? Give those 5th graders some acid to play with? That'll go well. How about the carbon cycle? Watching a carbon atom in our hydrosphere, in our biosphere, in our geosphere, in our atmosphere? What impact does humans have on how much carbon is in our atmosphere? How about now? How about the future? How about solving algebraic equations? You know, algebra is the #1 academic reason for dropout. And I'll tell you why. The kids are actually very smart. In 7th or 8th grade, they take pre-algebra, and they know algebra is a requirement to graduate high school, okay? So you're 7th grader or 8th grader, you're having algebra or pre-algebra, and the first step of a multi-step question, you know, algebra is often 7 or 8 steps. First step involves 7 times 5. So you as a student are going 7 times 5, teacher's on the first step, teacher's on the second step, teacher's on the third step, teacher's on the fourth step, teacher's on the fifth. Oh, 35. I got it, 35. I missed the last 5 steps. I have no idea what the teacher did. I'm lost. I then fail pre-algebra, and I say to myself, to graduate high school, I'm going to have to do well in algebra, but I'm not a math person. I mean, other people are, Barbara, you're a math person, but she's our CFO, so I know she's a math person. But I'm not a math person, so I can't do math. So it's really smart, actually, to drop out. That's a good decision. That's what we're seeing among our kids. And yet we can do algebra gizmos that take the burden and turn it into joy. And students come to me saying, you know what, I hated math, but now I love math. That's the power of instructional technology, and that's the promise of Cambium Learning. Talked a little bit about 7 times 5 and how long it took that kid to get 7 times 5. The reality is we have a solution to that whole math fact fluency problem. When I was in school, math fact fluency was taught by taking an index card and jamming it down your throat. If you open wide enough, you'll get 5 times 7, darn it. 8 times 9, quick, hurry up. That was the methodology I learned by. And it works for some kids, and you know, most of us know our addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, at least reasonably well. But a lot of kids it doesn't work on. So what we created is a game solution that, first of all, and I think most importantly, is effective. But secondly, it's adaptive and fun. Now, games in the classroom have had a lot of stigma. I've been around a while, and for a while, nobody wanted to use games in the classroom. Until we started realizing that those struggling kids are impacted the most if you can engage them, if you can have them involved, if you can have them motivated. How many people have seen kids on their phone for hours playing a casual game, right? Sometimes you've seen me play a casual game for hours, not during work, but. All right, so clearly that motivation matters, and we got to use that. So we come up with a number of games that is adapted to that student in real time, giving them the fact families they need that may be different from the fact families another person needs, and you give them a variety of games, and they get motivated to be successful in those games, just like they would on the PlayStation or the Xbox or anywhere else. Egyptian conniption, I just like saying that name, much less playing it. Now, this all comes down to something serious. There's a poverty gap in our country. There always has been, but I don't think it always will be. It doesn't have to be. In fact, the old joke was, if you tell me your zip code, I can tell you your SAT score. Now, it's not a funny joke, but it's relatively true. It's very much socioeconomic based. Free and reduced lunch. If your kid's on free and reduced lunch, I can tell you they're probably doing poorly. That should be disgusting to us. And it is, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let me take a look at Reflex Scores. Each of these dots represents a Title I school. There's 100 dots, okay? Each dot, Title I school has 100 kids. 100 times 100? You guys haven't had Reflex. 10,000, okay? So 10,000 kids come in, what does it say? Less than 40% fluency? We see this in 8th grade often, 7th grade, high school. You'd be surprised. So what happens when they take Reflex for 60 days? They all move up. That y-axis there is their amount of fluency. They all moved up. So I say to myself, John, that's terrific. That's a good number of kids. What's the x-axis? You didn't tell me what that was. The x-axis is percentage on free and reduced lunch. So what this chart says is when they take Reflex, regardless of whether they're on free and reduced lunch or not, All the kids raised up. All the kids. That's not a chart I would have expected. I would have expected the Title I kids or the schools with more Title I kids to do worse, but they didn't. We can even the playing field. We as a business, we as a marketplace can level the playing field with appropriate adaptive solutions. And when you do that, you get a chart similar to what you got with Learning A to Z. Growth year after year after year after year after year. 2 years, a little flatness. You want to know why? Because John made a mistake. You want to know what that mistake was? I didn't know Chromebooks were going to take off. Chromebooks took off. Gizmos didn't work in Chromebooks. They do now. But we all learn, right? Not just the students. You get year after year after year growth in your business if you focus on solving the problems and helping all kids reach their potential. Voyager Sopris Learning, third business unit. Now we're in the rapid fire mode because I don't have much time left. We want, Voyager Sopris Learning focuses on intervention that has some degree of decline in the last few years. So we decided we're going to make it like Learning A to Z and Explore Learning. We're going to invest $20 million in 2 flagship products. One, Language Live. The thing I want you to know about Language Live is it's effective. It honors the teacher and it honors the reading research. And together, we've made an effective solution that closes the gap, 2 years of learning in 1 year, which you have to get that kind of gap closed quickly. We use a lot of peer videos because remember, if the kid's behind, you have to motivate. You can't talk down to them like they're in 3rd grade, even though their content is in 3rd grade. Sometimes you make it edgy, so they stay engaged. When they stay engaged, they make progress. They make progress, they're motivated. When they're motivated, they learn. You get them the critical thinking skills. Obviously, we need a lot of dashboards for the information. Anytime, any classroom. Extend the school day for those kids that are struggling. That's how you make a difference with kids that are struggling. I only have a couple minutes left to talk about a product we're most proud of, Velocity. The neat thing about Velocity is that it's true one-to-one. We worked with a company called NLearn, and most adaptive is just branching a little bit slightly different. But what we did is we took reading and brought it down into its discrete elements, atomized it. So if you're in a normal product, you're going to take scope and sequence, you're going to branch a little bit, and you're fine. If you're truly adaptive, you don't have a scope and sequence. Because the reality is, what happens when that student needs something from 1st grade or needs something from 6th grade if they're doing great? You can't have a product like that. But instead, by using an engine that looks at how each student is doing on these discrete elements of reading, you can get to the point of having a truly personalized product. The end result is a unique learning path for each person. Some students will have 6 times the content than other students. No 2 learning paths are the same. In fact, they're created on the fly. I'm going to go quickly past this example. Avatars have to age up because the reality is, as the kids get older, you can't treat them like they're still in 1st grade. You got to have a lot of data, and you got to have actionable data, both at the district level, school level. This is interesting. The DNA. This is a student that is on path, right? And the reality is it's deep, and you're studying lots of things. And each DNA of a student is like a fingerprint, because each student is different. Now take a look at the shape of this next student. Much wider. And the reason is they're having to go back in earlier grades because they need to be retaught things. They need the things that weren't even covered in your scope and sequence. This is truly individualized learning. And if we dig down deeper into this, we can see that she's studying comprehension. She's trying to understand setting. She's trying to understand figurative language. Only this kind of product is truly adaptive, not these products that say they're adaptive by changing pace or changing support or changing a little bit of branching. We think because of this, our declining products in Voyager Sopris Learning that are print are being replaced to some extent by those that are increasing. Our digital products, we're at an inflection point that we're going to have VSL, Voyager Sopris Learning, look like Language Live, look like Learning A to Z and Explore Learning. This is our model, the green being digital, the blue being not digital. As you see, we're going to change this business. In 2012, it was 37%. In 2016, it was 73%. It's now going to be 80%. When it's 80%, it's a very different company. It's a very different company for our customers. It's a very different company for our shareholders. Finally, I end with this. Financials follow that pattern. Over these years, we've increased EBITDA, we've increased EBITDA margin, we've increased cash, we've increased cash income margin, and we've improved net income to the point that it was, again, net income profitable at the end of the year. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry I had to rush. I appreciate your time. Take care.